How are you, dear?
My friend, how are things?
Yes.
Tim knows everybody, apparently. Okay, so I'm going to kick us off because I know everybody has a very busy schedule. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time or are watching, we are a food insecurity task force. It was developed out of Bill 5146 in this past session. And really, that bill had two major parts. One was to develop this task force with more of a narrower focus around connecting local organizations and regional organizations to supermarkets to help coordinate a little, improve the and streamline the process, and you know, basically to get as much excess food as we can into the hands of those who need it. And then the second part was lifting the liability for the donor, so that that was one more obstacle we removed in case there was any hesitation on the donation end. So we've had a couple of really good meetings, a lot of good discussions. Hopefully you all have gotten the information that Samuel sent out, which was follow-up. And Tim, I know you're newly joining us, so if you didn't get that, Samuel, if you want to forward to Tim the information that you sent out. We had the labeling, you know, what's good after the expiration date, what's not, which is really, I was, you know, really excited to get that myself. And then also the presentations that we had from our agencies.
Great.
So
Happy to join the task force and happy to help on the issue.
yeah, we're going to have you introduce yourself, Tim, and tell us all about you. But first, I just want to turn it over to Senator Moore to see if she has any opening. We are co-chairs of this task force. If you have any opening remarks.
I'm just glad to be here this morning. I was in Chicago yesterday looking at unbelievable things that they're doing in Chicago and very on the west side with food. So I'm anxious to see what we are able to do and bring that information back to us, that there's so many other people doing great things on food. I hope we can also. So I want to say good morning to Tim. We're old friends and we're good friends too. And good morning to everyone here. I'm looking forward to this meeting, and thank you, Dorinda.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Senator Moore. And before we get into the agenda, I do want to introduce Tim. And Tim, if you can just talk a little bit about your role, and then we can catch you up.
Sure. Well, thanks again for having me. I'm Tim Phelan. I'm the president of the Connecticut Retail Merchants Association. We're a statewide trade group that represents a variety of different retailers. We don't concentrate our attention a lot on food issues. We defer to experts like Wayne and his members. They're really the food folks, but we do have some members. We have Target, we have BJ's, we have Costco that are members of ours, and they do sell food. So this issue touches us a little bit on because of those members, but we're far from experts in this area. Again, Wayne and his folks are really the lead experts in how to deal with this particular issue, and I wouldn't try to step in any way and you know, try to lead you to think that I know more than he does on this issue. But I'm glad to help and participate. And my members, the three that I mentioned, are also have provided me with a little bit of information about what they do and how they do it, and I'm happy to share that with you if you'd like, and to, you know, participate, as I said, in the task force as it moves along and be of assistance in any way that I can.
That's awesome. Thank you, Tim. And just as a reminder to everybody, supermarket defined in our statute is any retail space that sells food, 3,000 square feet of retail space that sells food. So that does include our Targets, our Walmarts, our Costco, our BJ's, any business that has more than 3,000 square feet or more is considered a supermarket in Connecticut. So Tim, that's a good segue. On our agenda today, we had two items. Well, we had a couple of items that we planned. Wayne and Jordan, are going to talk about some best practices of supermarkets today. So we can look at where there may be gaps, but also look at what can be a model for other supermarkets, and then hear from our local organizations in reaction to that. And then also on our agenda today, we had Mike, who's a member of the task force, who was going to review. He helped to author the New York legislation around supermarket donations, but he had a doctor's appointment this morning, so he will not be joining us. So we will do that on the next agenda. So I think we'll turn to Wayne and Jordan. Wayne, if you want to, it's up to you guys who wants to go first. And then Tim, after they talk about supermarket in their world, what's the best practice, I think we can turn to you to your representatives as to what some best practices are.
Sure, that sounds good.
Thank you so much. I'll lead off. I know Jordan is here. Jordan and I spoke a little bit last week just to kind of make sure that we kind of tried to catch it from a couple of different angles. Me from around 5,000 feet with many of the ways that all of our members engage in food donation, and Jordan more from a at the ground level, store level, with some specific examples of how her organization interacts with these many organizations, faith-based groups. I mean, there are so many that we try to work with. So she's going to take it from the store level. So back when this issue surfaced, Representative, we had started talking to some members about this and tried to gather some information just to try to understand what were our members doing, because again, they're all separate businesses, right? So everybody has their own take on how to do this. So we started collecting some information last year, back in, I would say, March and April. I put together a small document with some talking points and some FAQs so that we could get a better understanding of where we were collectively. Basically, all of our retailers, all of our Connecticut grocery stores, traditional grocery stores, have a process of formalizing and streamlining store level protocols related to food donations in an effort to be fair and consistent to the many interested organizations. And I think one of the caveats is they wanted to also be mindful of the store employees' responsibilities and daily tasks as well. So there's a bit of a balancing act that happens as it relates to folks that have a daytime job, and then they need to turn around and make sure we're getting this right and interacting with food resource recovery organizations. Our main partner is the Connecticut Food Share, along with food pantries, soup kitchens, senior programs, child care centers, churches, veterans organizations, and local farmers, to provide in the communities we operate in with donations that provide millions of meals every year. I mentioned several of those organizations, but they also include churches, veterans organizations, and child care centers as well. So there is a full gamut of organizations that actually call on the stores locally. They come into the stores, they say, hi, we're the organization in Branford, we're a local church organization. They walk into any one of our stores in Branford. Obviously, they're welcome. Obviously, that conversation is had. It happens every single day. But I'm sure a lot of the folks in the food insecurity world know who these organizations are, but there are plenty of them, and they're all in need, and that's what we can all agree on. The primary bulk of the food that we currently donate today goes through the food bank. Non-perishable private label grocery products, canned fruits, vegetables, cereals, pasta, rice, etc. Frozen meat and proteins, individually packaged chicken, ground beef, pork, turkey, anything that you can think of from a protein standpoint that's frozen and donated to to the food bank generally. Each store individually works with local organizations to schedule weekly, bi-weekly pickups on non-saleable food items that match, their individual needs, ranging from really commercial bakery and in-store bakery. That's the bulk of what those organizations come and gather each day. And I would make a point, because I actually have this bolded in my notes. This came from one of our folks, one of our larger members. The reason we don't offer perishable items in this relationship currently is the lack of confidence we have in maintaining the cold chain and ultimately the food safety of some of these products. Obviously, part of what we're tasked with here is to come up with some solutions to be able to distribute some of those products, specifically proteins and some of the produce. And that allows us to expand our reach, right? So we could we could actually, with some confidence, knowing that there is cold space storage in some of the organizations we deal with, certainly be able to, donate some of that product locally versus all of it going to either Wallingford or, excuse me, I'm trying to think of food share up in Northern Hartford. So a lot of that food, a lot of those proteins, a lot of those produce items are going to food share in the former food bank, which is now food share. We also have, one of the things I didn't mention is we have a large relationship with local farmers around compostable produce. There are farmers around the state that, if product doesn't go to a relief organization, it ends up going to a farmer who is in turn using that product as compost and feed for their animals. I mean, I guess the key in the conversations that I'm having with our folks is that anything we can do to keep anything out of the trash and reclaim it somewhere in the hierarchy is where we're going to look. And that's pretty much what we're doing with that. But I would also like to point out that, and again, this may not fit into how we distribute food, but I think it's an important point that we are running multiple community fundraisers. And again, I don't want this to be a pat on the back for the retailers in the state of Connecticut, but we run multiple fundraisers throughout the year, whether it's give your receipt back to this and from this particular retailer and goes to a local charity and register receipt funds, you name it. There are dozens of them. I can certainly look into what some of those are and share those, but those aren't just food donations. Those are actually money donations. And Jordan's probably got a better handle on some of this. I'm sure she'll touch on it. But I happened to talk to Highland Park today, and I mean, they're out of the Manchester area, and they're donating over $400,000 a year in cash to different relief organizations as well. So I just, as we talk about the particular food donation and the needs, and I get it, we need to figure out how to redirect some of these animal proteins and some of this produce to places where it's most needed locally and localize this. I just wanted to score that point because it came up time and time again. So I just wanted to share that with you. It's in the tens of millions of dollars probably a year in the donation side that is monetary and not food donations to local organizations as well. And I think it's important that we recognize that. And then there's obviously around the holidays, the free turkeys and all of that stuff, the sack hunger programs that we're involved with. We're giving away tens of thousands of turkeys a year as well. Obviously, the holiday becomes stressful for folks, especially for those most in need. And we're well aware of that as well, and certainly willing to share that information as we move forward into the holiday season with everybody as well. So that's a view from 5,000 feet. I like I said, Jordan and I had a conversation last week. kind of tee this up and make sure we weren't kind of stepping on each other's toes. And if I could hand it over to Jordan, or if you'd like to hand it over to Jordan, I think she can add a little bit more texture about what happens specifically at the store level.
Sure, Jordan, if you don't mind, and then we could open it up to questions to both of you.
Of course. Good morning, everyone. So just as a reminder, I have a presentation. I don't know if that's helpful for you.
Sure, we can make you co-host. Samuel, do you have to do that?
No, Jordan, you can just share your screen and then it will just pop up.
I'm going to attempt to do this.
It should be on the bottom of the your options. Yeah.
Second. It doesn't want to let me. That's okay. I will do my best and I'll send it out for everyone afterwards. Is that okay?
Jordan, do you want to email it to me and I try to pull it up while you're talking? It's up to
Sure.
you. Okay.
Sure. 1 second. Thank you. I sent it. Thank you.
Okay.
So, as Wayne mentioned, we spoke last week, just for those of you who have not been on the call before, my family and I own 3 ShopRite supermarkets in the Hartford area. Our company name is Waverly Markets, but we do business as ShopRite. ShopRites are all family owned and operated. And we belong to a cooperative called Wakefern Food Corporation out of New Jersey. So we are not a franchise, we are not a chain. And sometimes we all do things a little bit differently. One thing that we do very, very consistently, though, is fighting food insecurity. So we do that together in a variety of ways. And then we all sort of put our own spin on it locally. So in terms of how we attack this, it's from a variety of angles. We do have a daily focus on this in our organization. So I have 3 stores, and every day it looks different in every store. So Connecticut Food Share will pick up usually 3 to 4 days a week in each of our stores. This is, and then we also have other organizations on those off days. So I will give Connecticut Food Share priority on those days. And then on the off days that they are not picking up, we will work with other local organizations. Some of those organizations could be organizations that are already benefiting from Food Share in some way, but perhaps haven't had enough that week, or they need a little bit more, or they're doing additional collections. Or it could be organizations that do not have a relationship with Connecticut Food Share, and we want to make sure that we are addressing their needs as well. Volunteers will come in, they know our people, they know where to go. This is, well established. We've been doing this for many, many years, and they will go directly to the departments first. They don't check in with anybody. They used to. If they were a new volunteer, they might do that. They go to the departments, they know our teams, they have carriages ready, and we have boxes ready for them. Sometimes they want to actually pick through it, so we give them a space to do that. Usually we have it ready for them, especially the bakery items. So as an example, they will come in, they will go directly to the produce department, they will maybe pick through, several boxes of produce. This produce, as a reminder, is produce that is probably not appropriate to sit on the produce stand because customers do not want to see anything that's slightly damaged. They only want to see something that's pretty and perfect. And so we take that and put that to the side. That does not readily go in our composting materials, which I'll get to in a minute. That truly just, goes for food share or for any of those partner organizations. In fact, I ran into one of them the other day, and he said, wow, these are great looking tomatoes. Isn't this wonderful? But, they might be bruised in one area or have a slight dent. And, so it works out quite well. They usually go to the bakery department afterwards, and, they're not just getting pastries, right? So that is some of what comes off of our shelves, but they're often getting bread, packaged rolls. Then our grocery department has loaves of bread ready for them. So, quite a few options for families, especially those that, not only making meals at home, but possibly sending kids to school with school lunches. So it is not just the sugary pastries, I can assure you. There's also wraps, tortillas. There's several different, things that might be expired that we do not keep on our stands, but we want to make sure get into the hands of people who need them. They then will proceed to the meat department where, and Connecticut Food Share brought us on with this many years ago. We would never have thought of donating meat. There was a different time. There was a different sense of liability in place, right? There was a very different, perspective in our industry on this. And so together with Food Share, we learned that we could freeze the meat immediately. So, we pull it off of our shelves well in advance of it not being suitable for eating. Of course, we have expiration dates, and there's, even a certain amount of hours where we, will pull it off prior to that expiration date. We freeze it immediately. And what that does is preserve the cold chain for us and make sure that it is suitable for consumption later. Much of that meat, and I'm sure Food Share will talk about this later, but much of that meat also goes to soup kitchens to be prepared. I'm sure some of it is in some way distributed to families, but typically it was our understanding that would be used to then prepare meals. So you weren't necessarily taking something expired meat and then handing it to somebody 3 days later to go home and cook. I'm not sure how that's evolved. And again, I'm sure Food Share can give more color to that. And so that's typically, what happens. Dairy. So yogurt was a new thing for us as well, expired yogurt. It was very hard for us to learn that it was okay to do that because I'm going to just be very clear with you. The liability piece is this much of my concern. The food safety and sanitation piece is this much of my concern. And I say that as a business owner, and I'm sure that might sound shocking to you. I don't want anybody getting sick, period. Take the liability aside. It would break my heart if anybody was ever sick. So that is our, top priority always in everything that we do. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more as I proceed in terms of, how we eliminate waste and how we prevent it in general so that we can avoid a lot of these issues. But the yogurt bit was fascinating to me. And I know in our last meeting, we did discuss, some of the expiration dates and what they might mean. So yogurts, we do donate frequently. And what they do then is they check out with the receiver. And our receiver is the person who checks in our trucks and all of our deliveries, and their title is actually security receiver. So they're not only, sort of posted at our back door, and making sure that nothing is going out the back door that shouldn't, and also making sure that what comes in is checked in appropriately, for our our financial model, making sure that we have what we say we have and all of that. And so they scan it out. We have a very, robust computer generated, ordering system, which also can track donations and track waste. And so, we are actually able to quantify what we donate on a daily basis, not just from the box that it sits in, but also we have a computer program that tells us. So like I said, I feel that in our organization, it's a well-oiled machine. We've just been doing it for so long, and we just keep expanding because the more you know, right? When you know better, you do better. You know, learn a different way of doing something. You learn what is appropriate in food rescue. And so we're always open and, you know, willing to learn more about what is possible in terms of what can be donated, always with that caveat of, you know, what is appropriate in terms of food safety and sanitation. We do not donate our hot foods and or our deli products. So I want to be very clear about that. You know, food safety, foodborne illness concerns are very challenging. And so, you know, we don't do that. There is a bit of a, we've learned that, like, you know, big blocks of American cheese can, you know, that might be a different story, but in general, any meats and certainly any of the hot foods. And I'll talk in a little bit about what we actually do with our hot foods. To Wayne's point, I want to talk about our partnerships. So there are multiple opportunities throughout the year to donate food and dollars to Connecticut Food Share and its partners and all of the other organizations we talked about. I'll give you an example. The most obvious one is the holidays, because, you know, as holidays approach, we are met with an incredible need for people to be able to make a holiday in their home. So, you know, I think all of my industry partners would attest to the fact that we make, not only do we get a lot of orders from, you know, community organizations and businesses that want to donate turkeys and hams and things of that nature and all the fixings, we also donate it. So I'll give you an example. We have a wonderful relationship with a lot of, you know, Hartford area organizations, one being the Society of Latin American Firefighters. And every year, JR will call me up and say, Jord, I'm going to buy, you know, 75 turkeys and all the fixings. Will you match it? And I'll say, yeah, sure, no problem. So that's what we do. That's an example of what we do. We do that with several organizations. We'll get a church in Bolton that will call us and say, we're going to need, you know, 100 turkeys. And maybe we'll be able to do a portion. We try to never say no. So sometimes some organizations might get a bit less, but at least we're trying to give something to everyone who asks. We have a can sale that used to be quite famous. That's now probably not so famous anymore. But in January, the original idea was that you had used all of your food through the holidays and your pantry was empty. And so now you had need to stock up on cans. This was, you know, created in like the 70s. So we still do it. And we have a lot of other things that are on sale other than just cans. But what we do is, like, there's so many cans left over because not a lot of people like to buy dented cans. So any dented cans we donate. And, you know, there's really no food safety risk. I mean, sometimes there's concerns of botulism with certain things. We're very well aware of that, but you can sort of tell when a can is not right and you can pull it off. But a general, just like little dent in a can, it's not going to be saleable. People don't want to buy it. We can absolutely donate it. I'm looking at my friend from the Department of Public Health and hoping that she agrees with me. But you know, summertime, that's another time. We've got kids out of school. They are hungry. They're not in school to get breakfast and lunch. So we partner with the local schools and summer programs to make sure that they have, you know, maybe it's a backpack full of food for the week for their summer camp, or, you know, we'll do that sort of thing. And as well as getting school supplies ready for them for the fall. And we'll partner directly with the schools for that. You know, we'll prepare these bags. I think I mentioned this one time in the front or near the registers in each of our 3 stores. We have these bags. Now we could be partnering with Interval House and doing, you know, toiletry bags, right, for people that are victims of domestic violence. And so we will fill a bag with, you know, a number of different items that, you know, people need for them and their children. And we will put a price on that. So we'll tally it up, whatever it is, and a customer will purchase that and put it in a bin. And then Interval House will come and pick that up. We'll do that with all types of organizations, food pantries, local shelters. And that's an easy way for customers to be able to give back and donate, and for us to get more food and essential items into the hands of people who need them. So we also have partnerships with local farms and composting, as Wayne mentioned. So these partnerships have been interesting and long lasting. We're now working with a company where we have bins outside of our store. I am now at the point where I can actually eliminate my produce compactors in my stores, which is a huge deal. This is a long time coming, but they're the right kind of bin. They're the right size. It's a great process. They show up when they say they're going to show up. So we're eliminating waste. My produce managers are so excited. They're like, Jordan, we're really just not wasting anything. You know, it's very limited, and we're not throwing things away like we used to, which is great to hear. We have holiday meal programs, as I mentioned before. So we'll donate, people will purchase to donate. We'll get involved with food share and, let them come in the parking lot and do a big to-do. And then we've done things too, where like in Hartford, we'll go to Pope Park and partner with, local organizations that are partially funding and partially want to be involved in donating. And, the public can come in and actually walk away with an entire holiday meal in 2 reusable bags. So these types of things are things that we do in our industry. And we're used to doing them. We're skilled at doing these things. So it's a combination of the food and dollars. We do also have Partners in Caring program through the cooperative that I mentioned that we belong to, Wakefern Food Corporation. So Partners in Caring is just wrapping up. It started at the end of August, and basically we collect at the registers in addition to matching whatever we collect. And we actually determine which organizations get certain amounts of money. So this is on top of everything that we do during the year. So as an example, especially the organizations that do not benefit from food share, they don't have a relationship with food share. So some of the local churches, some of the local food pantries, we're seeing a lot of these pantries, as you must know, popping up on college campuses, that sort of thing. We will then, say, okay, 1,500 to this one, 500 to this one, and we'll make sure that it's having, the maximum impact. The one thing that we do that I'm not sure all of our partners do, all of our industry partners do, is we have nutrition education. I employ 2 full-time dietitians between my 3 stores at my expense to offer free services for the community. So as a customer or an associate or a community partner, you can have a free consultation with one of our dietitians. And they will shop with you. They will show you around. They will teach you how to cook. They will teach you how to work with ingredients on or not on a budget. There are a lot of different ways that they are, sharing information about healthy choices. They are embedded in a lot of our local school systems because they go out and they talk to whether it's a PTO or it's the actual principal of a school or a superintendent. We're getting calls from senior centers. We're getting calls from, local nonprofits to do work, in addition to, local banks that want to provide health and wellness resources for their associates. So the education piece is, I think, one of the most important parts of all of this. We spend a great deal of time with children as young as preschool, all the way up to our beloved seniors who really need to, it's not just to address health concerns. Sometimes it's just to figure out how to fill your belly and how to nourish yourself properly. And so there's a lot sort of poured into that, right? It's moving your body, it's knowing how to shop. So they will also participate in a lot of this food rescue work. So they put together all of the bags that I spoke about previously. They do a lot of the outreach. And they'll also do cooking classes and demos. So, we have in 2 out of our 3 stores, we have kitchens and cafes where they will sit and do, wonderful cooking classes with people. So it could be a Girl Scout troop, then they need to earn a badge. It could be a birthday party. It could be an organization that, is really trying to, I just had a meeting yesterday, an incredible meeting with a local organization that's working with girls empowerment. And a lot of these girls are dealing with everything, challenges with food access, challenges with not having support at home. Many of the things that we all do every day in terms of our community outreach, in terms of addressing. And we had an exciting conversation about what it would mean to have people come in here on a regular basis and just get excited about food. And also, we'll teach you how to shop on a budget. We'll teach you how to walk a store and read labels. We'll teach you how to do all of that. So there are some of us that are doing a lot of the nutrition education piece. And again, the fact that it's free of charge, I think makes all the difference. We have everybody from somebody who was recently diagnosed with, a chronic illness to people who just, want to feel better, right? So we're sort of accustomed to handling that now. And so, I want to just talk about eliminating waste for a minute. So in addition to the food donations, the composting, and what we call in our business shrink, which is loss, any loss. We have real shrink concerns, right? It's a huge number that can affect our bottom line, right? So we're motivated to make sure that that doesn't happen. And it's everything from the items that we put out for display, how we merchandise them, how we price them, all of that, to what we're doing about food waste and trying to prevent it in general. So I talked a little bit about some of the things that we do, but we do have these, robust programs to try to avoid this concern, and we do track it. So those things are possible. And so I feel that there are many of us that are in a position where we do have the resources to track this sort of thing and to have a program that works, that is not too onerous in terms of daily administration of a food rescue program. There might be some of us that are smaller. I'm thinking about some of the smaller retailers, or, if we talk about 3,000 square feet, that's a lot of organizations that might not have some of the technology and some of the infrastructure. Nevertheless, I think that, shrink is a concern of all of us. So I do think that there's a piece there for education that would really be able to get them on board and make sure that they have, a method to execute a proper program that can make a difference in their community. And again, that education piece, it's education of our associates, right? So shrink avoidance, giving back, the whole process, it's education of our customer about how to shop, how to prepare food, and how not to waste food. And you'd be surprised, maybe you wouldn't, how many of our customers that waste a lot of food. And I think we even touched on this in a previous meeting. We try to partner with them on how to avoid that and how to make it all stretch, right? Just because it's the right thing to do, and because we want to make sure that as many people are fed as possible. And then again, educating the retailers on the process, because an onerous process is not going to succeed, and we want this to succeed. I've talked about food safety and avoidance of foodborne illness. There's one thing that I want to talk to you about that is probably something you're not expecting, but it's a real challenge. Those of us who do not have generators, full store generators, suffer great loss when a power outage occurs. And I know that probably is coming out of left field, but we wanted to talk about some of the challenges and barriers. This is a challenge. So for some food rescue organizations, and for people like me that don't have full store generators, if I'm out of power for more than 4 to 6 hours, there's a lot of loss. And the problem is I can't donate all of it if I have food rescue organizations that do not have power themselves. So what do we do? And so these are some things that maybe we want to put on a list and say, if you're talking about, how to avoid that. I can tell you it's happened too many times to count. It's a devastating day in my organization when that happens, and we'd like to avoid that at all costs. Trying to think if there was anything else that I wanted to bring up. I think I covered it. Sorry if I was long-winded, but I wanted to make sure and get every piece that was on my mind, and hopefully we add it to the list. So thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. I can see why you're the model. You're so passionate, and you're really, very proactive, and you have been for years. So to, communicate all the different aspects that you have been working on, I'm sure by the time we are done with this task force, a lot of those components that you execute on will be communicated to other supermarkets as, again, as a model. So thanks for your passion and thanks for helping all the people in your community. And, love that bag program, love the can sale, love it all. So thank you. I see hands up, but I think we heard from Supermarket Association, we heard from Jordan. I don't know, should we go to you, Tim, and talk about what your supermarkets do and then open it all up to questions?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And let me just say, Jordan, I have that can lingo, in my head right now. So it's one of the greatest of all time. It comes right up. So I feel really, to be honest with you, I feel like I'm way behind in the information I'm going to give. You guys have been probably ahead of me. And so please forgive me for that. And I'll do my best to catch up. The three members that we represent, all because they're pretty much national in scope, although they're not in every single state, most of them are, they all seem to be using a nationwide partner, Feeding America. And if you're familiar with that more than you're way ahead of me, because I'm not. So they use Feeding America, and then they apparently use also local Feeding America food banks. And so the feedback they've given me is that those seem to be working well. They also have internal training methods that they use with their staff to track what donations are made, and they keep it. They have some special training on how to do it properly and how to communicate with the Feeding America folks that they work with. So I guess they've also worked in one case. BJ's is working nationally with the FDA and some stuff, and trying to decrease their food waste. So I just feel like I'm behind a little bit in specifics because I'm not quite sure what specifics you might want me to get from them. But they all participate in local food donation programs. Primarily, they use the Feeding America, and they all have internal training programs, and they all have internal sort of tracking and activities that they use to sort of follow what it is that they've done to date. And so and they all expressed an interest to me that they would be happy to work more and do more if there are better suggestions on ways or ideas that you may have to get them more involved in this process.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tim. And no need to apologize. We brought you in a little late in this process, so I'm sure there'll be more information that we'll be seeking from the merchants, but that's good information about the national partnership. And just to clarify, this is BJ's, Target, and Costco, correct?
Yep.
Okay. You don't represent Walmart.
I do not.
Okay. So they're not in the supermarket association. They're not in your association, but do either of you know if they're in a separate lobbyist group or association?
They have a contract lobbying firm that they use.
Gaffney and Bennett.
Right. As far as I know, Wayne, I mean, you may know more. I know they're not members of ours, so I don't know.
I have a contact there, though. I mean, anything we need to do. They were a member here for many years. They were paying both us and a contract lobbyist at one time, but we are still fairly well connected with them. And, figuring out anything that we need to communicate to them is not going to be an issue.
Okay.
Yep.
If you don't mind, before the next meeting, just reaching out to them, bringing them up to speed. They're a large player in the state. We want to make sure they're in the loop. And particular, if we end up passing additional legislation that may impact them, it's better to be on board from the beginning.
I'll reach out for them today.
Okay, great. Okay, so now, thank you to Wayne, thank you to Jordan, thank you to Tim to give us a perspective from the supermarket perspective. And now I'll open it back up to questions. And I think Reggie, you had your hand up, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you all for speaking. It was great. So yeah, around this time last year, Lori and I started talking about food waste and food rescue. And that conversation led to the bill, the HB 5146. It's just through like jawing around. A lot of the work that when I was imagining what it would look like is exactly what Jordan was talking about. So I'm very happy that you're here because it's pretty much working towards to get to what your standard is to make effectively what everyone else is doing. And I like the part where you're talking about I guess my favorite part was when you talked about the education, you also include the education in regards to like cooking classes. That's I think we should wind the scope into that as education. It's not just giving out pamphlets, it is teaching people how to cook because people don't buy stuff because they don't know how to use it. That's why no one touches a kale, no one touches a lot of stuff just because they don't know how to use it, at least around here. It's like one of the, it's something that lies around all the time. But yeah, I had a few questions. You mentioned that you were, well, I guess I could have asked you all this question. You were mentioning you are talking, you do internally how much you give out and all that. Does it go up to someone or is it just like is there like a person you give this number to that tracks how much food is? Well, I'm just ranting at this point. I have to formulate it more, but is it effectively I'm trying to figure out is like, you have these numbers. Does it go to anyone or is it just like company, it just stays in your files? Is there like, does it go up to like the Stop and Shop greater co-op? Like, is it like, or is it just you do it personally?
No, so like I said, ShopRites are individually owned and operated. And
ShopRites
so
are.
the co-op is, I do use them for some, financial services and financial reporting in terms of their technology. But as the owner of my business, it's not really like going, I mean, they could probably pull reports, I'm sure, but and they have access to my stuff, but it's not really, it's not like it's going to somebody. The reason that I track it is not because I have to report it to anybody. And frankly, if I had to, I'm not sure that I would be very comfortable with that. It's really more about education of my staff and having them understand and be their own merchants, right? So in each department, if I have I'm making this up, right? If I have a deli manager who, has been given goals, financial goals and customer service goals, right? And training their staff goals and all of that. Waste is a part of that and shrink is a part of that. And so avoiding that, being their own merchant, knowing that they're putting out the right items for sale at the right price and that it all looks great and that it's working, that's part of their job, but part of their job is also shrink avoidance. So it's a lot of it is education internally and it's having those conversations and then of course, just educating our staff on what we actually do for the community. So I personally, and in my company, we do a very terrible job of highlighting all the stuff that we do. Like that was very uncomfortable for me to do all that just now, but I thought it was important for me to tell you what actually is occurring in many organizations. It's just not it's not typically what I do. And I know that you, many of you on this call focus on data and I focus on data from a bit of a different perspective. And I understand I think I understand what you're asking. And I just, it doesn't have to go anywhere. I use it, but I do use it in various ways.
No, it's cool. Like I love it a lot. I just have one more question. It's in regards to the composting. How long did that take? And was it like how long did that whole transition take? And is it something that you is there like a square footage that you use? You say you guys are almost down to waste. Was it like a 1/4 acre of land that was needed, or was it like a dumpster size full of compost? Like, what is your footprint and how long did it take to get to that, I guess?
So I'd have to grab more specifics on the actual program. We've started and stopped on composting many times over the years. And I imagine many of our, industry partners have done the same because it started off as, local farms, right? And that still exists to this day. We still work with local farms, but a lot of companies have just become, a lot of waste management companies have just become hip to the fact that there's this whole other market out there and that it's important and they're aligned, right? They're very much aligned with our goals of, reducing food waste. So now we're at this point where we have these bins, they're bins. but they come frequently, but it's, and it's, you know, it's nothing that you would feed to anybody, of course, but it is useful in terms of farming. And so what works is when it's a program that has minimal complications, right? So as we know, if we're going to talk to, you know, people who are in the supermarket business about adding to their list, because I can tell you that the list is long every single day, right? And we are a penny business, you know, so we need to make sure that whatever we do, we're saying this is doable. This is not going to cause, you know, it's not going to add a lot, you know, to your day. This is, I mean, obviously it's logical. Why wouldn't you be composting? But, you know, this is simple. We put the bins out back. You put items in the bins, we pick up the bins, we clean them, that's it, you know? So, yeah, so I would say it's been like this over the years because I think the waste management companies really had to become comfortable with adding that to their services. And then some of these companies are standalone companies as well, so.
Yeah, Jordan, that's a very good point. In some instances, there wasn't a market for, you know, food waste in general. There's a company called Blue Earth Compost, who happens to be one of our members, and another company called Quantum Biopower out of Southington, where all of that food waste goes to. And that is, again, that's product that we couldn't donate. It goes to Blue Earth Compost in many instances. They are just a food recovery, you know, organic waste hauler for, you know, that's what they are. And they bring that product to Southington, and in Southington, it is turned into methane gas and powers the police station and library in the town of Southington. But we have members from all over the state, down in Fairfield County, New Haven County, certainly Hartford County, because they're located in that area, that are utilizing Blue Earth and Quantum Biopower. And Stop and Shop is so big, with 89 stores in the state, they actually backhaul all of their food waste, all of it. So their food waste goes back on their truck, and it goes back up to Athol, Mass, and it is put into their own anaerobic digester, which they own. So there's a process in place for food waste, whether it's, you know, pig farmers or farmers in general, or certainly, you know, haulers that are willing to pick that up and bring it to the digester in Southington. And we have many, many members that are going that route today, where it's going back to Quantum.
Cool. Tim, I was wondering do you know if there's any composting going on in any of the places? Are there any like, yeah, if you know if there are.
Reggie, my initial reaction to that is no, but I don't know for sure. So please allow me to
No worries.
find out.
Of course, man. Thank you.
Are you all set, Reggie? Okay, great. Cynthia.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, loved hearing these presentations. It's being a regulator, you know, I look at things differently, and it's really opened my eyes personally. But I'm taking lots of notes because I have to report back, and I think it's really good information for me to let DPH folks know what's going on this level, because like I said, it is different from what we normally do. I just had a couple of questions for Jordan, and I apologize if I missed this, but you mentioned that you don't donate hot foods and deli meats, but I think you said you would mention later what you do with those foods, and I apologize if I missed it because I was taking notes, but what happens to those foods?
Yeah, no, I probably wasn't specific about it. So hot foods, within the window that they are safe to be eaten, we usually we'll usually feed our associates, to be honest with you. You know, like in the middle of their shift or end of their shift. We've been doing that a lot lately. After the window of when it's really needs to be pulled from the hot bar, even though it's hot, if there's anything left, which is unlikely in our case, it is discarded because it is not safe. There are some times when certain things can be pulled and excuse me, and chilled down, depending on what it is, and put out for sale. It's a long process, and it's usually not enough. And it's not worth it to do that, because it's just a lot of labor goes into that, which is part of the reason why I'm not comfortable donating hot foods, because it's very little that we actually have left over. And the process to actually keep it safe and make it safe, I feel like is not necessarily worth it at that time. Deli meats, we don't, that goes in it goes in the garbage. That's not something that we would ever donate. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And the other comment was about dented cans. So yes, little dents depending on where they are in the can, but there's a great guidance document with color pictures that helps educate people on the dents and where they are, whether they're a concern. And if they're not a concern, they're safe. The food inside should be safe to eat. And I can share that document. It's put out by the Association of Food and Drug Officials. And they've really improved it lately. It's available online. They have an app. You can put it on your phone. So I can share that if you're interested in that. You may already have it. I don't know.
Yeah, like anybody who's like in their environment, like if you're in the medical field, right, you have a lot of institutional knowledge, right? If you're in our business, there's a lot, I buy dented cans all the time and I keep them in my house, but you'd be surprised how many people won't touch one. So yes, to your point, but again, that's part of that education. Incredibly important for the general public to understand that.
Right. Thank you.
Cynthia, if you send that to Samuel,
yes,
he will distribute it to everybody, because I think just like the labeling, that's useful information for us all to have and for us to disseminate.
All right, I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay, great. I think Senator Moore was in the queue next.
Thank you. Thank you all. Jordan, you touched my heart. You do things, it seems holistic, that you see something needs to be done and you move on to the next step to make sure it happens. But, you're up in the Hartford, I'm down here in Fairfield County. You're a great model. Do you know that the other ShopRites follow that model, or they're doing something similar?
Absolutely. It's a great question. Yes, I know all of the Connecticut owners very, very well. They are all doing their own version. I can probably get you some of that information offline if you'd like, just out of, curiosity. There's also our sister stores are Price Rights. So I know you have Price Rights in Bridgeport and in that area. Price Right is actually a wholly owned subsidiary of our cooperative. But we all own a piece of the cooperative. And so we're very in tune with what Price Right is doing as well. And they also have a robust program. So yes, we all do our own version of it. And Wayne probably has some insight into that too, because they're all members of the Connecticut Food Association as well. So absolutely.
Yeah, I can be honest with you. I can bring on any one of our members, and Jordan, you're amazing, and I'm so glad that it's you. But I can bring on any one of our members and have this exact same conversation. If it's Stop and Shop, if it's Big Y, if it's one of our ShopRites, if it's one of our independents, Adams Hometown Markets, Highland Park Markets, Geisler's Markets, I can bring on any single one of our members, and you would be hearing the exact same thing from them, because I speak to all of them. And Jordan is just such an eloquent, she's amazing, obviously, and does it with such pride and passion. But we've got these dietitians in almost every single one of our ShopRites, which would be 29 around the state. The Singaris have them down in Fairfield County. We have them up in Canton. We have them in Orange. We have the the food preparation classes that Jordan talked about. That's happening in a bunch of places. It's not just her stores. So Jordan gave it to you from her level, but I could promise you, I could bring on any one of our other retailers. I'll line them up and have them get on, and you'll see the passion that they have for what we mean in a community, because we take it seriously. So this is not, akin to just Waverly Markets. This is all of our guys. I'll bring on Bob Laban. You want to see somebody who will talk for hours about this, he'll do it. So I'm so proud of Jordan, and I'm so proud of our industry. And I think one of the reasons why we were so interested in engaging was to educate folks as to what we do, first of all, and second of all, figure out how do we redirect some of the work that we're doing so that it gets to better places, if that in fact is the case, and certainly want to engage in that discussion and that ability to do that. So yeah, it's happening everywhere. I mean, she just gave you a microcosm of what we do across the entire state of Connecticut as a grocery community. So thank you, Jordan. And again, I would be more than willing to get on any one of our other retail partners outside of the ShopRite brand and bring them onto this call and have them speak to this group as well, because I can tell you, you would hear the same thing. Reggie had a comment about tracking. And I just wanted to get back to that. That has come up in some conversations, and Jordan, you handled it so well. You do it internally, but you don't do it for publication and for any other reason. And I can tell you that is something where I'm not even 100% certain that all of our folks know exactly how much they're doing. I mean, they have a sense because they do it. But if you ask them to tie it up in a bow, that'd be quite a, hell, I'd like to have that to go over to the legislature and show every legislator, you know, what we're doing across the state as a community when we're going in to talk to them about other issues besides this particular issue, because our stores in the communities matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Lori?
Good morning. Yeah, Jordan, your model is exemplary for our state and for the country. I really am so impressed with that. And also, like Senator Moore, really moved by your commitment to the larger community and even to your employees. I really love, I mean, when we work with other folks who have food, it's like, please feed your employees first, because we know that folks who work near food are often food insecure themselves. So I really love that. So my question comes in, I would love, well, perhaps Cynthia may help us with this, but the hot food that gets left over and the deli meat, I mean, I get that you probably don't have that much left over given your model, but when other places do have that, there are organizations that are able to chill the food, and it won't necessarily be a good fit for the connections with Connecticut Food Share, because, you know, the model of what happens may not work out. But the last mile folks, so the food recovery organizations, like I've said before, if I was to pick up the cold chickens, I always say roasted chickens, as Representative Moore knows, you know, the following morning, those, you know, when I'm delivering those to a senior site or whatever, that's going to be their next meal. So, you know, it's still safe to eat. I mean, it's the same, like if your deli meat is today's date, you can expect someone to buy it and it'll still be good for a couple of days. You know, although you can't sell it tomorrow, certainly we can expect it would be good tomorrow and probably the day after. And so there is this room of food that's still going to waste. So this is not just about you, Jordan. I mean, like, but let's look at this. There's still room that we know that food is still good if it's handled well. And I know that, you know, I really appreciate actually that concern on your part. Or who was it? You know, maybe it was the Hot Foods Donated. I guess that's it. Just about being safe, and that line, that chain is really important. And same for me. I mean, we like I said, we send this food, you know, to a place with capacity that we know either will immediately share it to be eaten or immediately chill it so that it's also safe. And this is the spot where we feel like we're in this space, like let's speak for the food that's still going to waste, that we should be able to do something with. Representative Porter can definitely speak to this, as she sees what happens in West Haven. And she also has been around leftover food. So there still is some room, and I think we need to do something about it. And Wayne, I mean, your organization, if they're as committed as Jordan is, you know, to the larger community and all the good work in that way, that's amazing. But on the other hand, some of your partners are definitely not as educated as Jordan or as committed to the part about the excess food and what's happening with that. And some of that's going to waste. I mean, we see this, you know, I don't know if it's daily, but some of those partners are not as committed. I think maybe not as educated. And what I hope that comes out of this task force is that we lift up the possibility of what can happen with that excess food. So if they know that they are, you know, they have that protection and how to store it safely, that we should be able to get that food out of the food waste stream and into the food system to be eaten by people. So why don't we ask Cynthia? So Cynthia, like what, this is your, let's put you on the spot, but Jordan's concerned about the deli meat.
Right. Well, deli meats, she's right to be concerned about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The pathogen that is frequently associated with deli meats is Listeria monocytogenes,
Yes.
and it grows at cold temperatures. It grows slowly, but the shelf life of those shouldn't be more than 7 days, I believe. So, that's definitely a concern if you're thinking about how long it's been in the display case, and then if it's donated, how long is it still going to be? Even if it's cold held at 41 or below, there's still that concern that the Listeria would grow to a point where it could make people ill. So I completely understand why, and I would have to agree with that part of it. The hot foods, if in our regulations, 1913 B42 for food service, if the food has been served, it cannot be reserved. So if they're serving that leftover hot food to employees, then if there's anything left over from that, according to our regulations anyway, it should not be kept and served to another set of people, even if it's cooled properly or hot held until it gets to that second group. If it's a hot food that hasn't been served, if it's been, at the hot bar, kept hot, that's on display, so that's not considered served. So in that case, as long as it's cooled properly or hot held properly and protected from any sources of contamination, then that could be safely donated. Just it's just, again, just making sure that it's protected and maintained at the conditions to keep it safe.
Yeah, I mean, I think that answers the question about the roasted chickens. I mean, I'll talk about roasted chickens because it's, there's a lot of protein in that and people are concerned, but you can in fact put them in the chiller and someone could pick them up the next day when they're cold. I mean, we can eat food when it's cold, so that's safe. No middle temperatures.
Yeah, cooling foods properly is one of the hardest things that food establishments have, because as Jordan said, it's a long process, and it's not easy, especially if it's a whole piece of meat like that. That's difficult to cool without breaking it down into smaller pieces. So it's labor intensive, and as Jordan said, it may not be worth it to, the time that an employee is going to have to take, and monitoring. They've got to monitor the temperatures to make sure it's meeting those parameters to be safe. So I can understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think on probably that level, or maybe size of store, and since you already do a lot with it, the employees, that makes sense. I'm thinking more in terms of the is it Tim's Partners? I mean, with people have gone into Costco and they're throwing away a whole shopping cart of roasted chickens that they're taking off the hotline that they, won't chill or donate. And, there's a lot of food there, and there's something that we should be able to do with.
Yeah, I made a note. I'm going to ask that question as well. What do they do with their hot food? I'm not, I made note of that. So I'll try to find the information.
Yeah. So I just want to go back to the deli meat again. So, because I think like these are the parts when we look at, I'll say like the Holy Deli department, including the yogurts, even those other dairy departments, there's a lot of food that is still good past its best by date. And so like these dates and date labels are really important. We know that folks throw food away or it can't be sold past those dates, but in fact, it's still good. And I feel like that this is the work for me. This is what I hope we're going to get out of this. Really drill down. What does that mean? So if it's Best By, I'm assuming that the deli meat you're talking about is the ones that you're slicing yourself, not necessarily in packages. Is this
all of the above?
Okay, so the ones that are in packages, then, I mean, what is the answer to this, right? If it has today's date on it, you can sell it to me. Is that right? And I can still buy it today?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to just use it, not to do anything to you. I was like, let's just look at this, because this is the problem that recurs all the time. So if you sell it to me today, how many days will you assume that I can still eat it? And it has today's date on it.
I would feel uncomfortable giving you that answer without knowing how it's being,
how I'm going to store it.
How it's going to be stored. What is the condition of it? I hate to tell you that in addition to food waste, like a lot of people are eating food that they shouldn't be eating if they don't store it properly or prepare it properly. And so, I
the
just,
best conditions. I mean, I guess like,
Yeah.
well, then let's not put you on the spot. I mean, what about then someone who's, different grades so that it's not your markets, but Tim or Wayne, how many days, if I buy with today's date on it, I mean, how many days, what are we doing as a culture? How many days is it still good? Held under.
I mean, I think we touched this on the last call with these born on sell-by dates, right? And
Right.
that these foods are good beyond those dates.
Right.
And what happens to all of those foods. And I would tell you, I'll only speak from a personal standpoint. I'm generally going to eat it well after that.
Yeah.
because I don't like to waste anything in my home. So,
Yeah.
I mean, how do we regulate or legislate that? What's the right amount? I'm not 100% certain. But yeah, I would agree. I would totally agree. The chickens, if there's a way to keep that product safe, that some of the deli meats that are potentially going into composting or some form of reclamation, that's probably not going to a food rescue organization today. And again, I think Jordan hit it head on, is because we're not really 100% certain most of the times what's going to be the storage capacity for those products after they leave our stores. And do the organizations such as yours, Lori, because like you and I have spoke offline, we talked a while back, you guys have the resources to do that in your building. You can go get it, you can go store it properly, you can get it distributed.
I mean, I would say like those kinds of foods those are foods that we will distribute directly. I mean, almost all foods we do a direct delivery model. With those kinds of foods, it would either go, well, probably I'll say subsidized housing for one thing, right? This is where people live. They might start opening up the chicken right there as we're delivering it, and they're going to eat their next meal. And in those ways, I wouldn't want to bank it, because then there are too many hands touching it and it's too much time. So it would go directly to people to eat. And
I think it comes down to a liability issue and a better understanding of where it's going once it leaves our door. I think that's critically important in the process to say, okay, I donate to Havens Harvest because I'm in the New Haven County area. I'm pretty comfortable with the fact that they have all the bodies to get it to that will eat it before it's a problem, right?
Yeah.
But these organizations would have to be really, really well vetted. I mean, Jordan, if you were to go there would have to be a real comfort level, I would think, and I'll just hand that one off to you.
Yeah, Lori, I so appreciate your passion for this and all of you. Really, this is it's an incredible experience to be with all of you and discuss all of this. I would say that if I took my industry hat off for a moment, and I'm going to do that for just 1 minute, and put my mama hat on and my chef hat on, right? What would I feed to my family? What would I feed to my neighbors? What would I do? I would be much more comfortable from both perspectives if the food was going to a pantry-like situation where it was either being cooked and added into something that was going to be cooked as a meal as a soup kitchen type of environment, right? Where you're preparing hot meals for people, or that somebody that was specially trained that was preparing sandwiches, for example, that were going to be distributed that evening, right? At that place and consumed at that place, I'd be much more comfortable. It's a very, very thin line. It's very, very challenging to think about handing that to somebody to then go back into their apartment or their house and then hope that they're not going to get sick from it. And I think that's where my head goes is, it's the same thing. I think on our last call, I talked about, experiences that I had at the soup kitchen in East Hartford, where, I know that things were picked up that day. And I mean, as I'm preparing a full meal and like even salad for some of these, like I'm not putting in anything that's not like, I wouldn't eat there's no way that I'm doing that, but I'm also I've had years and years and years of experience, right? So if we have the people that are educated at every level of this, at every single place, then I think we have a better shot. But it's like with the meat, Jason Jakubowski's, predecessors at Food Share had to convince me that I could freeze meat and give it. I mean, I was like, what are you doing with this meat? If you're going to bring it right to a soup kitchen and it's going to be prepared, I'm good. If you're going to be giving it to people and it's like expired already and it's poultry and I couldn't even imagine it. So, and I say all this understanding the position that why we're here, right? We're here because people are hungry, and I get it, but it's a thin line.
Interesting. I think the other, I mean, I agree with you, it's a thin line. I mean, some of it is cultural. I remember I had a family from Central America living with us for a few months, and they made a pot of meat and it stayed, actually I was living in Tucson, it stayed on the stove for days and they ate it for days. I didn't eat one bite because I would have been in the hospital. And
Lori, my father-in-law is from Central America. He lives in my house, and I can attest that there are pots of beans and soups and various things that are on my stove. And I am like raised in an Italian family with fresh ingredients, like everything is,
yes.
every day. I can attest to you, you're right. There is a piece of that. But I always say to him, if you're going to eat that, you better heat it up, and you better heat it up. And then I'm not responsible for any, but yeah, I think you're right. I mean, there is a piece of that, and that you can't be responsible for everything that people do in
Right.
their homes. Like, and that's, I get
Right.
it.
That's probably right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're some folks are going to do things differently, and those are concerns that we can't be responsible to the very end. I mean, I think our responsibility is, I mean, we tell everyone this food is a hustle. It's good for today and good for tomorrow, but not for 2 days from now. That's grocery food or the food that we get from Yale. I mean, it's prepared food. It's got today's date, but it's not good for a while. Eat it today. The other piece I think that was really interesting is when you mentioned about the power outage, because we've heard about a few years ago, when we had that weird storm in October, I had spoken to a couple of markets in Hamden, and they said we had to throw out thousands of pounds of food that would have been perfectly good if it was going to be cooked soon. And in the meantime, I talked to the head of Housing Authority, and they said that they were out buying food when all their places were out of power and folks had lost their fridge. So when, I could have rolled the food down the street, and because they went out and bought barbecues because they had no other power. And like, I could have rolled the food down Whitney Avenue to these places for people to eat it. And instead it was just, discombobulated. And that thing I think is really important. I mean, I know, Cynthia, this is where you're going to jump in on this one. I mean, certainly, no. I mean, come on. I mean, let's have the real discussion, because power goes out. We have these freak storms or things happen, and the food may just then be out of temperature for a bit of time. I don't mean for days. The food I want to collect is the food that I'm going to eat myself. So I don't want to put anybody at risk. But we know that food then could still be edible, if it was eaten right then, or, get stored for a short time. So what does that look like, since these storms are not likely to stop and we're going to keep hitting them more frequently? What do we do with all this food?
So if I could I have a partial solution, which is let's put it on the list for this task force, which is some sort of hotline or some centralized place that supermarkets and smaller places could call and say, like, because I gotta be honest with you, I can't get it to you.
Yeah.
Because I'm in the middle of a disaster, right? And trying to make sure pipes don't burst or whatever. I mean, it's a nightmare, trust me, on so many levels. But if there's a place we could call or several places we could call and just say, this is what I have, come get it. Do you know the frozen foods that we have to throw out? It's awful to watch. It's awful. And it could totally be defrosted properly and cooked and prepared. And like, because we can't refreeze it.
Yeah.
And then I can't cook it all up and sell it because I don't have any power. And then we are hamstrung. It's an awful situation. It is one of my top challenges. And this is the answer we get like from an Eversource when they take forever to get to us is, well, how come you don't have a full store generator? And I'm like, do you have $350,000 lying around? Because that's pretty much what it costs for each of my stores. I'm like, I don't have that. So what, and even if I mean, again, it's we have been trying to solve this. And if we pick up the phone and call a local place, they're not necessarily going to be able to get to us because again, they don't have power. So, and then you don't want to be in a situation where you have some of these local places like using grills indoors and cooking things unsafely. And you have, we don't want any of that, right? I mean, we've all been there with these storms. So even just a centralized hotline to call to say, I've got this, and it might work for all donations or some donations for smaller outfits that don't have the relationships necessarily, but for sure. And when I mentioned the American cheese in my presentation, that's something I can donate. If I'm out of power for like 12 hours, but I've kept it in a box cooler and it's still temps like that, that's one of those things that we've been given permission to donate. But and I know I'm preaching to the choir and that I don't need to say this, but if you saw the amount in entire departments thrown away, it is a devastating day. And so if we have the right people at the table, we can prevent all of that from happening. That said, we need organizations that can prepare the food, and I'll show up and cook. I might not have power in my store, but like you can count on me, put my name on the list. Like if I have a grill or some sort of outdoor situation, I'll cook for the whole community and have them come. In fact, we did that one time on the front stoop of one of my stores. Because we had a couple grills that were out and we just started like grilling for whoever like came up in the middle of this storm, and they charged their cell phones because we had like a backup generator in the store that just powered the emergency lights. But I will tell you that if we just had that, we would solve so many of these issues.
You could call us
Tim.
anytime.
I'm sure there's many organizations that will sign up for that outage plan. And that is definitely something that Senator Moore and I have on the list. By the time we conclude the task force, we'll have a list of areas that we need to address. And I'm just gonna, if I may, move on to a couple other questions. And Reggie, I know your hand's up, but I'm gonna go to Virginia because she hasn't had an opportunity yet. And I saw somebody else.
Jenny,
your hand was up too as well. So Virginia, and I just wanna remind everybody, we're at the 11:30 mark. So we only have a half an hour left and we wanna try to get everybody in, so Virginia.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just did want to comment from consumer protection standpoint, definitely selling deli meat past a sell-by date, we would not allow that. And we actually get, you'd be surprised, a lot of complaints about stores selling, products past that date and say a sell-by date. So consumers, I know we've talked about that before, but they are very the best by dates, that's just a quality issue, but they are very aware of these dates. So definitely deli meat, no. I mean, I know there were stores like Costco's, I don't know if they still do it, where if they had hot food, they would rework that to like a chicken salad or something like that because they have the capabilities to do so. I don't know if they're still doing that, but I do agree with Jordan that reworking that product is the best bet as far as safety. I will say for the logistics with the storms, because I have been as a regulator in stores where all this food is being dumped. But we do have some warehouses that have, they rent out refrigeration and ambient storage. So it may be a partnership where if a whole store goes down, if you have the logistics with the trucks, which would be the trickier part, but getting that food to a facility that may be on a backup generator that has the refrigeration and the frozen storage is always an option because we do have more warehouse type facilities in the state that are doing that, where they're renting to different businesses. That's it, thanks.
Great, thank you, Virginia. And if you, at some point before we can conclude, if you can share those organizations that have that refrigeration and those backup generators, we certainly want it to go to our local organizations, but it sounds like the capacity based on what Jordan and Wayne are saying, how much the volume is that needs to be tossed. I know that's more than the capacity of our local organization. So anything we could refrigerate and store would be great. Jenny, did you have your hand up before?
I did, but I'm all good. It was related to the generator thing, and sounds like it's going to get circled back to later on. So.
Okay, great. Reggie?
Yeah, love hearing Jordan talk again. I want to ask Tim, would it be possible to ask your people if that's also the biggest barrier, just like the lack of centralization? Because it seems like the biggest issue is that it's like it's a hassle to call someone. Like you have to call 35 numbers to figure out if there was a centralized place that did everything, if there was a group or agency that did everything.
Yeah, I think some of the feedback we got was, yes, that would be helpful if there was some central agency that coordinated all or helped them coordinate all this.
Love to hear it, brother. Wayne, question in regards to CT Food Association, percentage, what do you cover every restaurant, like every grocery store in Connecticut? Like my apologies, it's like if you become a grocery store, are you part of the CT Food Association? Is that what it is?
Well, we have a few stragglers. I would tell you like 90%. We have a few stragglers. Stu Leonard's, for example, is not a member. Where Trader Joe's is very close to coming on board. So, you know, that would cover almost all the independents, Stop and Shop, Big Y, ShopRite, Price Right.
Does it include like corner stores and stuff like that too? Like what about the smaller, like
no, C-Town and Bravo and those folks are members through the Crasdale organization. So some of the inner city stores and
so they use different standards effectively.
Yeah, those C-Towns are our members. Yeah, so those would be Bravos would be our members, but we're generally mostly 12 to 12,000 and above, like about that. So like the bodegas are not members.
All right.
Traditional bodega in some of the inner cities are not members. Traditional grocery retailers are our members.
So the traditional one, because in Bridgeport there's some like that, so they're just doing whatever. Like it effectively, I just have to roll up to them and be like, "Hey, what are you guys doing in regards to that?" Like they don't follow in regards to standards that you guys keep. Like there's no like industry standard effectively. Like it's not anything that's like we do this at this level.
No, not for those groups, but like, so for example, Jordan mentioned Price Right, right? Yeah. We can collect and work with them to figure out what their policy is, or, you know, share best practices with them, and organizations like C-Town and Bravo, which are again, I believe in Bridgeport as well. I think there's Aldi's, there may be an Aldi's in Bridgeport, I believe are right on the border there.
It's like Fairfield, Bridgeport, yeah.
Yeah, so they're a member. Less active than most on the Aldi side, but yeah, we have the ability to get to them.
Cool. So yeah, hearing all that, I want to say that I think that conversation needs to be talked about infrastructure, because it seems like we don't want to just worry about this for 1 year, get something done, but we want to make it easy for Jordan 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road. There should be some kind of agency. I mentioned it last time, and I think someone mentioned 211. I called 211. It's outdated. Like the Bridgeport stuff, they had stuff that was 5 months closed. Talked to some friends in the mutual aid New London. They don't even recommend it. It's not used all over, so it is a resource. The website, I looked at it. It's kind of not the best, or not the same, but it's not the most updated. I think there should be a series. And I also looked into the, what is it called? There was a mention of council. I only saw notes for over 2 years. There was 6 meetings. So I think that there should be a more serious conversation about not only what we're doing, but the infrastructure, because I don't want to say like the council's not, but 6 meetings over. Again, I'd say food insecurity is only second to housing. So it should be something there should be an infrastructure, a centralized place, and something that's purview is long. So we don't just spray a fire now and it comes back a year later when grants ran out, or when like, we shouldn't be living off the backs of whoever gets grants. There should be a better system in mind is effectively what I get to.
Thank you, Reggie.
No worries.
Okay, great conversation. I'm scribbling as fast as I can. Jordan or Wayne or Tim, I'm not sure, who knows, on the tracking system, and Jordan, it seems like you have a specific tracking system. Have you been able to tell, based on the increase in your donations, and it sounds like you've been doing it for years, so I'm not sure, what the reduction, any percent in reduction in your tipping fees for your waste? So your trash hauling, have you seen a reduction in your cost of your trash hauling because you're diverting it to those in need.
Yes.
Okay.
So recently though, because we just started with this new composting program too, so we knew that that was going to happen. I mean, that still charges us a fee, but yes, more and more seasonally, it depends, to be honest with you. And it also depends on the arrangement that one has with their waste management company. If they come too often, or, you know, they like to show up sometimes and then they charge you an extra fee. But yes, you can somewhat correlate that. But again, it's a lot of it is there's a lag time, you know.
Okay.
You know,
Because I think that's such a great selling point for other supermarkets that, you know, may not be, because obviously the goal is to get the food into the hands of those that need it, but they're also in business, right? And they have a bottom line. So to be able to demonstrate the impact financially to the bottom line, because food waste is one of our most costly, right, products in our waste stream, because it's wet, it's heavy, and some folks aren't composting and they aren't diverting it. So being able to use a tracking system to show what that reduction is a great selling point. Also, my other question is, and this is to you or Wayne or Tim, is there any tax benefit? Is there any financial benefit to showing through your tracking system what you donate? For example, when you do your taxes at the end of the year, has that been helpful for you?
I mean, it's utilized obviously, and I would tell you that these are all independent businesses. So for example, the ShopRites are 6 different business units. You know, does Big Y or Stop and Shop collect all of that information by state because they're multi-state operators? That's I don't know, but I would tell you that there is that benefit, and there is the benefit of the reduction of the food waste as that goes to either composting or you know, some form of organic recycling. So yes, on both of those fronts, the answer is yes, and on both of those fronts, they're certainly taking advantage of both of those avenues as it relates to the bottom line.
Okay. And the reason I ask is because when we were first introducing the legislation, one of the legislators asked that a tracking system be included. And we certainly don't want to force anybody to take on a specific record keeping process, but I just think the tracking system is key because it demonstrates what's being donated. It can demonstrate what the cost reduction is in the carting fees. It can demonstrate for tax purposes, you know, what's a write-off because it's a donation. So I think the tracking component is really key, and I want to talk, you know, more about it at some point. Let's see, my other question, you know what, I just want to bring this up real quick if I can. So there was a lot of discussion about composting, and just for informational purposes, this is the EPA food waste hierarchy. So what it, oh, I got all these pop-ups that tell me to clean my computer. Hang on. Can't get rid of it. Let's see. There we go. Okay. So the hierarchy says, you know, feed hungry people, right? Then feed animals. It sounds like we hear there's a lot of that going on, being donated to farms for food scraps. Then industrial uses, which is energy, right? The anaerobic digestive facilities and converting it to clean energy. Then composting, then landfill. So these are all of the diversion in order of priority for what to do with food waste. I just wanted to share that with everybody as a reminder: people first, animals, energy, composting, landfill. Put that down. And then, hang on, got a lot of notes around here. So I think that I just want to talk a little bit, and I'll get back to you, Reggie and Lori, in a moment. I just want to talk a little bit about where we go from here, just so everybody knows what to expect on the horizon. So the last couple of meetings have been very good informational meetings. And I think the next meeting and probably the following meeting, because we have a lot of other topics that folks want to hear about, will probably be a little bit more informational. And then we need to start to round out our recommendations, whether it's legislation or it's communication to the associations. But the next meeting, I just want to make sure we're on track. And I see Kaylee that you're on here. Are you there, Kaylee?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So for the next meeting, will you be able to talk about the food council that exists in Connecticut and some of the work that the food council has done and some of the goals and next steps of the food council?
I would be happy to speak to my staff and confirm our availability. We are hosting a hemp conference that day. So I just want to make sure that myself and or my commissioner would be available. But I can confirm that by the end of the day.
Okay, that'd be great if you let us know, because while we're in this information gathering period, we just certainly want to know what the food council, the work that the members of the food council are doing. And then also we'll be hearing from Mike. He will be back at the next meeting to talk about the New York legislation that was passed. I just want to talk about the impact and the obstacles. And then the federal labeling laws discussion that we asked, they weren't prepared for this meeting. But Senator Blumenthal's office can be available 2 weeks from now to talk about what's going on in the federal legislation regarding label laws. And then, so those are the three potential agenda items for the next meeting. And then also we, Senator Moore and I have discussed that we want to eventually start to also talk about the framework for the grant process. So as a reminder, we had put $10 million in the bond bill for authorization for infrastructure for resource organizations. So when we talk about things like resource or backup generators, potentially that grant in bonding will be able to help with some of those needs. That is a grant process that will fall under the Department of Agriculture. And one of the tasks of this task force is to help the Department of Agriculture come up with some framework for what those grants, it will be an open competitive grant, what that framework will look like. Kaylee, did I get that right?
That is in line with the conversations that we've had.
Okay, awesome. So I'm just letting everybody know, setting the stage that we need to get to that as well. And we only have about, I think we have maybe 5 meetings left. So more information, maybe more information, and then we got to start to round out the grant recommendations and other recommendations. Senator Moore, is that?
Yes, I was thinking about that bonding also on how we could use that. So we'll have to have a deeper conversation, maybe address some of the things that we've heard from Jordan. And it goes back to what Reggie was saying, if we could quantify what people are donating and put a number on that for people who are giving away and donating great quantities. I mean, they're feeding the community. We should be able to assist to make it not so burdensome on them, but somehow that we're able to contribute to that also. Looking forward to those conversations.
Yeah, and I think that tracking, just going back to that tracking, because I'm not, numbers kind of person. I think that's going to help when folks go to apply for whatever that grant looks like. I'm sure the Department of Agriculture is going to, just like any other grant we do in the state of Connecticut, right? If a land trust is applying for open space, or if somebody's applying for brownfields, or Department of Transportation, all those competitive grants we have, there's a lot of analysis and demonstration of the need that's, is responsible in order to provide money to an organization. So we'll need to put a little structure around that. Okay, Reggie?
Yeah, I was wondering if Jordan and Tim and even Wayne would be able to make like a list of the easy asks, because it sounds like there's stuff that if they just had 1 or 2 conversations that would help us a lot, just by instead of guessing what needed. If there's a bunch of easy asks, like if it is refrigerating, or if it is like whatever, like effectively if there's a way to come back next meeting with like a list of easy asks, things that are needed from I don't know, 1 to 5 or something. And if Wayne could ask his constituents, like, what would that be on? Yeah, what would it be? Just so we have like a kind of ground level of what people actually want. And it's not like us in a silo just trying to guess. If we could have them just like, I don't know, give us your top 5 complaints and then we work from there.
Sure, we'll do our best to do that, Reggie. I know there's lots of information that I got today that I need to go back and filter with my folks. So hopefully those not only get those answers for you, but get those other questions that you just raised.
Yeah, and lastly, I just want to say again, I think we really need to just figure out like a centralized system, because Lori should just be able to call 788, and then if Jordan has food that's rotting, not rotting, food that's like unchilling in the freezer, they should all both be able to call the same number and someone just roll down the hill. That's exactly what everything that's being talked about could be done just through one centralized organization with infrastructure and purview, et cetera, et cetera. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Reggie. And Tim.
Yes.
Samuel can send out to the whole body the 3 links to the 3 meetings we had,
Okay.
including today. And
Right.
this way, if anybody, and that's for anybody on here today, if you want to share
Yes.
the work that we're doing with leaders in your industry or maybe other local organizations, just to have everybody see the work that we're doing. So, just so they're up to speed.
Yeah, no,
So
thank you. I appreciate that. Allow me to get caught up as well.
Sure. And then I just wanted to go back because we've mentioned 211 a couple of times. 211 is only as good as the information that they get, right? So they're a really good resource and this is not just food insecurity, it's maybe shelters or other programs locally. I find sometimes that they're outdated, but that's because the organizations have not shared. In my own city of West Haven, I will call 211 and I'll say, oh, that, they're missing this, this, and this. But if nobody told 211 that those organizations exist, they're not going to have them as a resource. So I think, across the state, we have to do a better job of letting 211 know what resources are available for people. So when they call, that is supposed to be our centralized location. And it is a partnership with the state that we also help to fund. Lori?
I wanted to speak to the tax incentive for food donations, because there's a great sheet that Harvard Food Law Policy Clinic helped write for Connecticut Deep, and it's up on their website. But in 2005, there was an expanded tax credit for food donation. In 2015, they made it permanent. So it does exist. And in fact, we work with an organization that's a private, for-profit organization called Food to Donate. And they work with, we get food from them from Starbucks, KFC, Longhorn Steakhouse, and Olive Garden, and they contract with them, and they're paid by the percentage of some of the savings from those corporations. So it exists. There's some money there. I mean, I know Wayne and I talked about this last spring a bit. It'd be great to add that as part of the education for the association. I assume, Jordan, you know about that, and you must use it well because you're tracking so well.
I have to be really honest with you, just to go back to the tracking and that for just a minute. It is not a huge priority of mine personally to get the tax benefit and to do all that. I mean, I submit what I have to submit, and it's really about doing, like, for me, it's about making sure that we're trying to eliminate that food waste and make sure that people are getting fed. So I actually don't even really discuss it much with my accountant. There are organizations that would, especially larger organizations, large chains. I understand that. That said, the tracking system, just to put a finer point on it for a future discussion, I use it because for informational purposes, right? And also because I'm tracking other things that have everything to do with the operation of my business. And it's a great part of the system that I have, right? It's another box that we can check, right? So it automatically does it for me. I just want to make sure as we go forward, when we think about asking people to track, that it is not something that is going to be really a huge barrier for them. If we want people to participate, I'm concerned about asking them to invest in any type of tracking system versus, trying to be more aware of what it is. That said, I understand if you wanted to put it as a part of a grant process. I understand that because I think you have to be able to show, what your processes are. But and Wayne, I'm sure we could poll the members, but I'm sure that it would be a very big challenge and heavy lift for some of our retailers to implement a formal tracking system. So we might want to think about it in a different way and offer some guidance and recommendations about how to do that versus, a more onerous process. I want this to work, right? And I want to make sure that people, it could be a big challenge to get people on board. If they feel like they have to track something in a way that they're not accustomed to or comfortable with or have the resources to. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, and I would tell you this as well. There's a disincentive side of that where I'll just donate to one place. You want me to track? I'll track. Everything goes to the food bank. I trust me that's a possibility and an unintended consequence of me trying to figure out. Let's say I'm giving to 175 different local charities throughout the state of Connecticut. Let's just say that's the number, because with some of our larger members, that's certainly the number. It's probably more. It's probably a couple of hundred. And now you want me to track that. Well, guess what? Not going to do that. I'm still going to give what I give, but I'm going to give it to one place, because now I'm tracking it and I'm in compliance. Jordan, back me up there a little bit on that, where this disincentive on the tracking piece could backfire if we don't think about it thoughtfully. I agree that we should figure out a tracking mechanism. I'm just concerned that we don't turn off some of, the amount of product will still be the same that's donated. It just may not be spread out the way it's spread out today. And I just would like to caution the group on that, and that's a real concern. I think Jordan and I are saying the same thing 2 different ways. That's all.
Would it be possible to add to that list of stuff disincentives also, just so we're not working against ourselves? Because it seems like I'd rather focus on fridges instead of fighting people over making a tracking system. Like if we're going to make $10 million, we don't want to use all the money on a campaign getting a tracking system down. We use it on getting new fridges and food out.
Right.
So is it possible to add like non-starters and disincentives, and then we'll work our way up the list backwards and get to one some point, but some way we have like a plan in mind? Like maybe.
I agree.
Cool, thanks.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, we certainly don't want to put an extra burden on those who are donating. I don't want to speak for the Department of Agriculture, but somehow, somewhere, the work that's being done will have to be quantified in order to receive funds from the state of Connecticut. So we have to figure that out. Okay, well, we're pretty much near 12 o'clock, and I think it's been a great conversation. I'm going to turn it over to Senator Moore for any closing comments.
I just want to say I'm learning so much about food and, my perception. And I think I'm just a regular shopper. I don't buy a lot of food. I'm just feeding one person, but I have families. I'm learning a lot about the food that's actually in the store and how it's prepared and holding on to it. I'd like to know where these stores are that have leftover chickens, because I've never gone to one after 5 or 6 o'clock and been able to find a chicken. So I thank you all for the work that you're doing. I think this is very thoughtful, and I know that we will come out with some good practices that everybody could benefit from. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Moore. And I'm sorry, Kaylee, one more question for you before 2 weeks from now. If you are able to present on the food council, do you also do individual city food councils? Are you aware of what cities have individual food councils, and do they somehow, do you have your arms around that? I'm just wondering.
We are aware of some towns, I'm thinking particularly New Haven, that has a similar food council, and most of them are active participants in either the Food Policy Council or perhaps ESF 6. I can try to see if we have that information.
Okay.
Just a list of who
I'm
might.
just curious. because we'll hear from a state perspective, the Food Council, but I know some larger
Yep.
cities. I think Senator Moore, does Bridgeport have a food council?
Bridgeport has had one for about 7 or 8 years, longer than that, probably 9 years. I don't know how active, but there is one.
So some of the larger cities have one, so that might be good information, another tool and model that we could share with other cities that are looking to possibly create a food council. So just, or maybe even eventually hear from the Bridgeport or New Haven Food Council, but
New Haven has
Dorinda,
2 years.
yeah.
Dorinda, I received something yesterday, Representative Moore. I received something yesterday from Greenwich, something they're doing on food, and I could share that with everybody to see what they're doing. They talk about sustainability of food. And they've got some speakers on from Bridgeport who are looking at a hydroponic farm also. So I'll share that with you all.
Okay, great. Great. Okay, we'll put it on the agenda. Okay, everybody have a wonderful day. And thank you for all the work and all your participation. It's such a critical issue. And I think this is just fantastic work and want to thank you all for participating. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Bye.